Okay, so I'll start with the questions. Again, very good questions, but to speak about something a little bit that will pertain to the answers. Okay, there's a difference between something appearing truly existent or inherently existent and us grasping it as inherently existent. Okay? The appearance of inherent existence for us ordinary beings, including, the bodhisattvas on the first two paths, then everything appears truly existent. Also, for the Aryas, when they're not in meditative equipoise, everything appears truly existent. Even though things appear truly existent, because of the obscuration on our mind, that doesn't mean that we grasp them as truly existent. Okay? The appearance, or sometimes it's called the perception of true existence. We often, but not always, when something is important to us or emotionally relevant to us, we tend to grasp it as truly existent. So first comes the appearance, or sometimes it's translated as perception. But then that doesn't always mean that you have to grasp it. So for ordinary beings, okay, you look around the room, there's a gong, there's a screen, there's, what do you call them? Those panels, acoustic panels, there's carpeting, there's people. You just look, it's no big deal, okay? And you can recognize all those things. The mind that knows those is called a conventional, reliable cognizer. Okay? It cognizes conventional things, and it's reliable, meaning it's valid. It will serve our purposes. And it's a cognizer. It's a consciousness. Okay. Now, if we're going to debate what color to paint that acoustical panel, already one person made a face. Okay, we're going into grasping at inherent existence. Because now it's not just looking around. Yes, that's an acoustical panel. It's like, well, I like that shade of gray. I want it to stay like that. Okay? And I'm sorry, I don't like that shade of gray. I think we should paint it another color. Okay. What color do you think it should be?
Shoulder white.
Shoulder white?
That's what we bought for the
Shoulder white. I don't know what color. White, thank you. Okay, and what color do you think it should be?
Maybe chartreuse?
Chartreuse, yes, that would definitely liven the room up a bit. Okay, so, we're American. We have to vote on everything. We can't just follow the leader unless the leader threatens us. But nobody's threatening. I said, okay, so she wants white. You want chartreuse. You like the gray. Everybody's digging in their heels because, that I can envision it, the color I want it, and it's going to be beautiful, and everybody who comes into this room will see it as beautiful. Chartreuse. And you can, the gray is boring, the white is boring. Chartreuse. We can actually outline it in purple. Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah. Okay, so we're really attached to that. That's grasping at true existence, okay? And we're going to defend the color we want. And all these other people are now our enemies, inherently existent enemies, because they don't agree with our ideas. And they will never agree. Everything about them is wrong and bad and despicable. I'm sorry to inform you. Yeah, okay. So that's grasping at true existence. Yeah, we're making it very solid. Our emotional thing is coming in, not only attachment to the color, but aversion to the people who have a different opinion. Okay. And it goes on and on and on. And then we mix in a little bit of arrogance because I always pick out the best colors, nobody else does. So I'm better than everybody else, you know. So it goes on like that. Okay. Those things, yeah. So when we're grasping at true existence, the object that we're grasping at, a truly existent object, does not exist. Okay? So, yeah, that chartreuse with a purple border. Yeah, I can just imagine it. In fact, I'm going to go paint it during the break time and look at it and admire it and think how good I am. Yeah. But what I'm grasping at does not exist. There is no inherently existent chartreuse panel with a purple border. Okay. But there is a conventional panel, chartreuse panel with a purple border. Okay. When I just come into the room at a later time and look, and there it is, that's the conventional one. Even though my mind, it's appearing to my mind as inherently existent, I'm not grasping it that way. That conventional one exists. Okay, the appearance of inherent existence is mistaken. So we can say that it's a falsity. Okay, veiled truths, conventional truths are falsities because they appear truly existent, even though they aren't. Okay, now when we look at that and we grasp it as truly exists, look at that beautiful color. I love chartreuse with purple together. Yeah, it gives me a stomach ache, but let's pretend it's nice. It's fantastic, and I'm so attached to it. I want to show it off to everybody. Then it's not only appearing truly existent, I'm assenting to that appearance and saying, yes, it is, grasping it that way. Okay, that consciousness is erroneous. The one where I'm just seeing it, yeah, that is an existent. That consciousness is reliable. The object I'm seeing is just a conventional truth that's appearing truly existent. Yeah. But when I grasp at it, the consciousness is not reliable. It is an erroneous consciousness, a wrong consciousness, because the object that it is apprehending, grasping, apprehending, a truly existent chartreuse panel, does not exist. Okay? So you might get confused. One of the questions here, okay, what is going on for those who assert, but for those who assert that emptiness is inherently existent? Okay, are they perceiving emptiness as a conventional truth? No, because an inherently existent emptiness does not exist. And if they are grasping emptiness as inherently existent, yeah, which is what you're doing when you're asserting it is. Yeah. Is emptiness inherently existent? No. If you're perceiving emptiness as inherently existent, that's not correct. Okay, so these people are really working on the level of philosophy and discussion. Yeah, why did they come to that conclusion? Because there is something that both the people who are absolutists, who cling to inherent existence, and the people who are nihilists, who say nothing exists, there's something that they share in common, which is both of them start out saying, if it exists, it must inherently exist. And if it doesn't, if it isn't inherently existent, then it doesn't exist at all. So there, both of these sides start out with, for something to exist, it's got to have its own nature inside of it. Yeah, this has to have something in it that makes it a thermos, and this has something in it that makes it a gong. Okay, and I have something inside me that is really me, irrefutable, irrefutably the essence of me. Okay, and if somebody loves me, they love that essence of me. Okay, now, is there something that is the essence of who you are that you can isolate and draw a line around and say, this is the thing that makes me me and totally different from everybody else? This thing is the essence of me. Yeah? Can you find something when you look in your body and mind? Can you identify? It feels like there's something that is. But when you search and try and identify it, yeah, you can't find what it is. Okay, so there's a few things here. Just because you feel something exists doesn't mean it exists. Yeah, this is important. Yeah, because a lot of people, well, I feel like this is the right answer. Well, that's very nice, but that doesn't necessarily mean, that your decision on foreign policy is correct just because you feel that. Okay, yeah. Or I think, whatever it is, yeah, you think something. This has been my thought since always, I've always believed in this. Well, just because you've always believed in something doesn't mean it exists. It has to hold up to, reasoning. Okay. This really can poke some holes in how we run our lives, because we run our lives a lot on, well, this is how I feel, and this is how I see it, and however I see it is the way it must exist. Yeah, I see this person is a criminal, they must be a criminal. Inherently, they're never going to be anything else. That is erroneous perception on the conventional level. Okay, so to come back to the question here, the absolutist would say, okay, I'm looking for something that is the essence of me, the essence of the panel, and I found something. Yeah, the essence of me, and here you have a gazillion, it's the spark of life that God put in me. Yeah, it's the extremely subtle mind. It's my Buddha potential. It's whatever it is, the Buddha that I'm going to be is already there. You identify something. Yeah. Does that thing hold up to reasoning? Yeah. Because if you say, my Buddha potential is the essence of me, then when you say, I'm walking, then your Buddha potential is walking. And when you say, I'm mad, then your Buddha potential is mad. That doesn't work. Okay, because if you're saying, identifying something that is the I, that is the self, then it has to serve as the self, whatever the self is doing. Okay? So the people who are absolutists say, yes, there's the essence of me, that's really me, that exists. Yeah, because if I can't find anything, then that means there's nothing that exists, and that's totally wrong. Then the nihilists say, yeah, I looked, I can't find anything that's the essence of me, therefore I don't exist. Yeah, that's kind of weird too. I don't exist. Then who is seeing? Who is, doing these things? Well, it's all just a hallucination. Yeah, it's all just a dream, not like a dream, but is a dream. They're different. Being like a dream and being a dream are two different things. Okay. Yeah. There being a ghost next to you, and they're, and the appearance of the ghost and there being a ghost are two different things. Okay. So the nihilists conclude, okay, I can't find anything when I'm searching for what the essence of me or the essence of the object is. Therefore, the object just doesn't exist. It's all, a hallucination. Yeah, so then it gives you permission ethically to do anything you want. Yeah, which is very, very detrimental. Okay, so what is going on for those people who assert emptiness is inherently existent? So what they're thinking is emptiness is the ultimate truth. If it's the ultimate truth, it must exist from its own side as some permanent essence that's really there. Yeah. God, or the black hole. Everything is emerging from the black hole. Or ancient Indian philosophies and some modern age, New Age philosophies, that there is this formless substance and everything arises out of this formless substance, but it all has the same nature in the formless substance. Yeah. So before you're born, you exist in that substance, and then when you're born, you appear out of it as the person you are. Okay, there's all sorts of theories about, what you can identify as really absolutely existing, independent of everything else. Yeah, such a thing does not exist. Yeah, it cannot hold up to analysis. Yeah, some of you may have studied Chandrakirti's analysis. Actually, it's coming from Nagarjuna, the first verse in his Karikas, that nothing is born from self, other, both, or neither. Okay? And so if you say something is born from self, that's like saying the result is there inside the cause. Okay, so we have lots of pine trees around here. Yeah, pine trees are big. The pine needles are, the seeds are real small. Yeah. Does the pine tree exist in that seed? Yeah. If it existed in the seed would be as big as the tree. Okay. It would mean that when you were conceived in your mother's womb, you were already an old person because the old person existed in there. Now, we may not feel that actually the result exists in the cause, but we may feel like there's some potential, some potential that make inside that seed that makes it into a pine tree. Yeah. What is it? Yeah. And you say, the DNA. So that means that if you string out the DNA, you look at it and you say, oh, that's a pine tree? I don't think so. Yeah. Okay. So there's nothing that is some inherent absolute essence from which everything comes. Yeah. So, because that's also grasping, that's an inherently existent essence. Yeah. So, what is happening for those people who see emptiness as inherently existent? They want something that they can say, that's really it. The essence of the universe, the essence of life, something, that really is me, that makes me an individual different from everybody else. I am I. And you raise your fist. Okay? So that's what's going on for those people. Are they perceiving emptiness as a conventional truth? No. Is emptiness a conventional truth for them? No. Okay. Because emptiness, it doesn't matter who it's for. Even if you perceive emptiness as as a conventional truth, that doesn't make it one. Yeah, even you perceive the boogeyman doesn't make there a boogeyman. Yeah. Are those people actually realizing emptiness? Doubtful. Because if you're grasping emptiness as inherently existent, what emptiness are you realizing? Yeah. Or is this more of a philosophical position they have to assert avoiding falling into nihilism? It could be a philosophical position, I'm sure it is, and it could be also something below, because emotionally you need something like that. It's amazing how, when we really look at some of our emotional needs, and not, some of our emotional needs can be philosophical needs too, but we grab onto them. Okay, for example, some of them, yeah, well, there's something that really is me. Yeah. And I need security. Yeah. I need safety. I need emotional support from other people. Yeah. So when these things, you're grasping at these things very tightly, you need them, then it's very easy to dream up something that fits that thing. Yeah. Okay. Then the second question, does emptiness appear inherently existent to an inferential cognizer realizing emptiness? Okay, now there's a big debate about that one. Okay, because, yeah, when you realize emptiness inferentially, what the object you're apprehending is a conceptual appearance, a dunchi. It's also translated as meaning generality. Okay, that is what is appearing. Yeah, something like that is appearing truly existent. Yeah, yeah, but it's also uncomfortable to say that emptiness appears true existent. So there's kind of a big debate about it. And one resolution of the debate I heard is emptiness may appear, well, the dunchi, the conceptual appearance, appears truly existent, but you're not grasping emptiness as being truly existent, because emptiness has got to be empty. That's one resolution to it. Yeah, you can debate that. If so, does appear in. Okay, so if emptiness appears inherently existent to an inferential cognizer, would we say it's a conventional truth for that cognizer? No, just because something it's not that the appearance of true existence is the criteria for something being a conventional truth. Yeah, that's not the criteria. It is what it is, well, let me take out the book and we'll start that part, okay, if I can find it in here. Okay. 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 So, although, here's what His Holiness says, although veiled truths are true from the point of view of ignorance, ignorance does not establish their existence, because ignorance is not a reliable cognizer. Okay? So even though from that perspective, from the perspective of ignorance, yeah, everything is, truly existent, that doesn't mean it is. It just means from the perspective of ignorance, it appears that way. But ignorance does not establish that object as a conventional truth, because ignorance has that erroneous, it's a false appearance, and it also grasps at the object existing in an incorrect manner. Okay? So, although veiled truths are true from the viewpoint of ignorance, ignorance does not establish their existence. As an erroneous consciousness, ignorance cannot establish the existence of phenomena because it doesn't apprehend them properly. The conceived object of ignorance, okay, that conceptual appearance, yeah, a truly existent thermos, for example, does not exist at all, but the thermos exists. Yeah, I've seen people get really confused about this. The truly existent thermos does not exist, but the thermos exists. Okay. but but the thermos appears truly existent to me, and you say that, my ordinary perception is a reliable cognizer. So isn't the thermos truly existent? It appears that way. No. Okay, because a truly existent thermos is like the boogeyman. Okay, you have something there and you misapprehend it. Yeah, a truly existent thermos is like thinking a scarecrow is a person. Yeah, there's a conventionally existent thermos, but you're misapprehended it. So there's a scarecrow, but you're misapprehending it. It's a wrong consciousness. Okay. Okay. So the thermos exists. The thermos is a veiled truth whose existence is established by a conventional, reliable cognizer, a visual consciousness perceiving it. Okay? So you're just looking, and it's a thermos. That's all. Yeah. But if it's, wow, look, this thermos, somebody invented a thermos, and now I can have warm water, chai, whenever I want it. I want a thermos, and plus it's bright pink. Can you get any better? Are you jealous of me because it's my thermos? Or do you think that I'm a special person because I have it? Or are you conceited because you think your thermos is better than mine? Okay, so do you see how the afflictions arise from grasping a true existence? We get into all sorts of games with this stuff, okay? And we're doing it all the time. And the tragedy, and it's really a tragedy, is that we don't recognize that that's what we're doing. Yeah, we think we're perceiving reality. Yeah, you didn't say hello to me this morning. I know you don't like me. In fact, I know nobody here likes me. Because in the morning, I look at everybody and they're all eating their breakfast. They don't look up and look at me when I look at them. And not only do they not affirm my existence, but I feel like I'm such a bad person, and that's why nobody likes me, and nobody looks at me over breakfast and says hello. Terrible. Oh, some of you, yeah, see, you're being very sympathetic to me. But this goes on, doesn't it? Isn't this what we do? Yeah? Some small thing. I'm certain this person's mad at me. I know they don't like me. Yeah? Whatever it is, okay? So, the conceived object of ignorance, a truly existent thermos, for example, does not exist at all, but a thermos exists. It is a veiled truth whose existence is established by a conventional, reliable cognizer that is not grasping at inherent existence. Because an ignorant consciousness grasping at inherent existence cannot establish anything as existing because it's a wrong consciousness. Okay? So Chandrakirti says, ignorance grasps true existence, and thus the object grasped by it does not exist even conventionally. Doesn't exist ultimately, and it doesn't exist conventionally. And whatever is a veiled truth necessarily exists conventionally. So veiled truth exists. How do they exist? They exist conventionally. Conventional existence is the only kind of existence that there is. There is not ultimate existence, because for things to exist ultimately, they would be findable under analysis when we do ultimate analysis. But whenever we analyze something to find out its ultimate nature, we come up with nothing. Okay, it is, well, we can't find that ultimate nature, but what we perceive is the lack of that ultimate nature. We perceive the lack, the emptiness of true existence. Furthermore, it is not the case that veiled truth exists only for an ignorant mind. That was going on in some of the questions, thinking, oh, yeah, truly existent things exist, but for an ignorant mind. Yeah, the boogeyman exists, even though my mind's ignorant, because I believe the boogeyman exists. The boogeyman must exist, because everything I think is right, everything I think exists. Yeah, there's a conspiracy theory over here. I think it, there must be that thing. Okay. Yeah, you really begin to see why grasping at true existence is, the root, and how, it just leads us astray. Okay, so furthermore, it is not the case that veiled truths exist only for an ignorant mind. If that were so, the entire world would cease for somebody who has attained nirvana, because they don't have an ignorant mind anymore, and ignorant minds made sure that veiled things, conventional, they ascertained conventional truth. So you do away with the ignorant mind, nothing, can establish conventional truth, so they don't exist. So if you, once you attain nirvana, you don't, the whole world ceases. Well, yeah. Veiled truths continue to exist after we have realized emptiness non-conceptually. Yeah, Aryas and Buddhas also perceive them. They may not perceive them the same way we perceive them. Okay, but they perceive them. Yeah, how do Aryas perceive them? As like an illusion, like a dream. Okay, so the word like or as is very important. There's a difference between something being like an illusion and something being an illusion. Okay, let's look at an example. Okay, I saw a picture in a newspaper article about about kids starving in where was it? There's so many places. I think this was Gaza. Okay, and there was a mother holding a baby. The baby in the picture, to me, looked like a doll. I could have sworn that she was holding a doll, not a baby. Okay, so that appeared to me as a baby. Because it appeared to me as a baby, does that make it a baby? No. Yeah. For that mother, it was their child who was alive, and they wanted to keep the child alive. That was not a doll, even though it appeared that way to me. So something appearing to our mind as truly existent doesn't make it truly existent. Yeah. And it doesn't mean it is an existent object. Yeah. If I said that woman's holding a doll, is that a valid cognizer? No. Yeah, it's an erroneous mind. It's a wrong cognizer, even though it appears that way to me. Okay. So veiled truths continue to exist, yeah, because Aryas and Buddhists perceive them. How do Aryas perceive them? They look like a dream, okay? They appear as like an illusion, okay? So there's an important distinction here, yeah. When we say like or as, yeah, what is the similarity between what is appearing to our mind and what we're comparing it to? Okay, the similarity is of the example to what it's illustrating is that I just lost my train of thought. Similarity is that the way it exists and the way it appears are not the same. Okay? It doesn't exist the way it appears. Yeah. So if you're dreaming, a dream object appears real. Is it real? No. Okay. You dream that you won the jackpot. Did you win the jackpot? No. Okay. You're saved from the suffering of winning the jackpot. That's got to be a lot of suffering to win that. Okay. But Aryas, when they are not in meditative equipoise, the thing appears truly existent, but they know that it doesn't exist as it appears. They know it's a false appearance. Okay. So when I learned that that mother in the picture wasn't holding a doll, even though when I continued to look at the picture, my eyes said it's a doll, I knew it's not a doll. So Aryas will still have the appearance of true existence, but they know it's a false appearance. Okay. For a Buddha, yeah, in the process of writing this series of books, I was able to have some interviews with His Holiness and ask him questions. So one of the questions I asked was, if you have a Buddha in conventional society, how do things appear to them? Because do they appear like a pure land? Yeah. Do they appear truly existent? Do they not appear at all because they're seeing their emptiness? What's going on? So His Holiness, there were 2 or 3 geshes there. So he started asking them, well, what do you think? What do you think? So they started talking, blah, 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 in Tibetan, kind of this incredible debate, going back and forth and back and forth. And then at the end, His Holiness looks at me and he says, we don't know. Yeah. Like, how does a Buddha perceive it? Yeah. One way they explain it is that Buddhas know what sentient beings perceive. Yeah, kind of like, well, the Buddha knows all phenomena, so he knows what sentient beings perceive. so they exist because sentient beings perceive them, and the Buddha does that. That doesn't, that's no, because that would imply that once everybody, something exists only because sentient beings perceive it, meaning that once everybody became a Buddha, everything would exist, including the people who became Buddhas. Yeah. So exactly, what a Buddha perceives, yeah, I can see why they came up with the conclusion of we don't know. Yeah. But, when I think about it, the Buddha must perceive, this is my guess, okay? The Buddha must perceive everything as a dependent arising. And in perceiving everything as a dependent arising, because Buddhas are omniscient, they must see all of the causes and conditions going back endlessly that led to this object. Yeah. Must be perceives, that's my ignorant guess, okay? But anyway, take it or leave it. Okay. Understanding the evolution of afflictions helps us discern veiled truths from non-existence. This is important. What is a veiled truth? What is a non-existent? Okay. The country was totally intoxicated by QAnon. And Q, this person who knew all these things about the future and could tell you what was going to happen and exist and could tell you how to vote and make good decisions. Q was a real person. Yeah. Well, there was some guy, writing online something. Do you think he had special abilities and talents to know things, and that you should follow everything Q said? That turned out to not be true. Okay. And many people got hurt. They went down the rabbit hole. Yeah. Yeah. There's so much going on in politics. I won't give you examples, but, just if you look in politics, what is the different, what are we trying to do as citizens? Discern what exists and what doesn't exist. Yeah. How do we do that? Okay. So understanding the evolution of afflictions help us discern veiled truths from non-existence. Yeah, so Q is not a veiled truth, okay? Yeah, and the cabal of pedophiles operating from the basement of a pizza store in Washington, D.C., is not running the government. They do not exist, okay? One guy got his gun and went to Washington, D.C., ready to, go into that pizza store and liberate those children held by the pedophile in the basement. But he got there and there wasn't a basement. Yeah. And there weren't a bunch of kids, on the strings of pedophiles in the pizza store. Okay. So discerning, what exists from what doesn't exist, important. In dependence on ignorance, distorted conceptions arise. They superimpose more, okay. So there's distorted conceptions. There's a group of pedophiles, in the basement of this pizza store. They superimpose more characteristics like the head of that cabal of pedophiles is Hillary Clinton. Yeah, that's what they said. Okay, they impose more characteristics such as inherent attractiveness and unattractiveness. Oh, this is horrible. This is, this cabal of pedophiles is terrible, in the basement. We've got to do something. Okay, so they impose inherent attractiveness or unattractiveness on the inherently existent object grasped by ignorance. Responding to ignorance is false superstition of inherent beauty and ugliness. Okay, responding to ignorance is false superimposition of inherent beauty and ugliness. Other afflictions arise. And you start spinning, I was lucky this guy came one individual to liberate the children. He could have had a whole posse and started shooting a bunch of people up. Yeah, because you have a wrong idea, you spread your wrong ideas. Okay? So that doesn't mean that person is bad or evil. Okay? That person is confused. Yeah? Are we confused? You bet. Are we evil? We're not evil. We're confused. So that person's confused and they suffer because of their confusion. They do actions that are non-virtuous, that will send them to a bad rebirth, that get them in trouble in this lifetime. But they're not evil people. Okay? They're people who are suffering from ignorance, just like us. Yeah, they're people who we must see with compassion. Yeah, really, we have to see them with compassion. Yeah, because seeing them as evil is not a correct consciousness. Yeah. Analytical reasoning can be used to refute the inherent existence grasped by ignorance. It can also disprove distorted conceptions and the erroneous ways that attachment, anger, and other afflictions apprehend their objects. Okay, so here's another quote from Chandrakirti, what he says about this. Attachment and so forth superimpose characteristics such as attractiveness or unattractiveness only upon inherent nature of things that ignorance has superimposed. Okay? It doesn't superimpose inherent attractiveness on things that are veiled truths, because it can see them more accurately. Therefore, afflictions do not work apart from ignorance. They depend on ignorance. This is because ignorance is the main affliction. That's why ignorance is the root of our samsara. Okay, so His Holiness explains the conceived object of these innate afflictions, which is the inherently existent beauty or ugliness, can be refuted by reasoning and do not exist even conventionally. Okay, so things appearing as truly existent, does not mean they are conventional truths, although conventional truths do appear truly existent to an ignorant mind. Okay, but that's not what makes them conventional truths. Here we must differentiate two types of innate minds. The first are those that reasoning cannot refute. For example, money, which is posited by a conventional, reliable cognizer exists conventionally and cannot be refuted by reasoning. Yeah? Can you come up with a logical argument that holds water as to why money does not exist? You can't, because money exists. You can't refute it by reasoning. Okay? So that's an innate mind, yeah, an object of that money is the object of an innate mind. The second are those that reasoning can refute. Inherently desirable money, that is, money as it is seen by a mind filled with greed. Yeah, I want all that Bitcoin. Yeah, I don't know what it is, but everybody says that it's good, so I want some. Okay? Yeah, does that inherently exist in Bitcoin, exist conventionally? Yes. Inherently existent Bitcoin exists conventionally? No. Okay. In this case, the extreme allure of money is superimposed and exaggerated. Yeah. So everybody wants Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a very interesting thing. Why does it have value? Because our mind made up value. Yeah, you create a Bitcoin and you convince everybody else it has value, and they'll give you real money for that Bitcoin. What about real money? Yeah? Does it do dollar bills or euro bills? Yeah. Do they have inherent value? No. They only have value because, our society says so. Yeah. You take them to Antarctica and show them to the penguins and ask them if, kind of these euros are useful. Do you want to change your euros into dollars or dollars into euros? The penguins are going to say that's totally useless. Yeah. Okay. So differentiating these is important in order to discern the difference between an afflicted mind and a conventional, reliable cognizer. Yeah, which we often can't differentiate the difference to when our mind is afflicted. Yeah. And to differentiate a non existent from an existent object. Yeah. A boogeyman may have terrified you when you were a little kid. Yeah. And you went to bed every night afraid the boogeyman was going to crawl out from under the bed and attack you. Yeah. Non existent, totally non existent. Yeah. As are a lot of the things we're afraid of. We dream up things to fear because we grasp them as inherently existent and then impute horrible qualities on them. Yeah. So that you just see it like the boogeyman. Yeah. So we all have our own versions of boogeymen. Yeah. And sometimes we project a boogeyman on a real live human being. Yeah. That human being is like a boogeyman. They're gonna, attack me. Yeah. Well, maybe that's just our mind making something up. Mm-hmm. I read an article about there was a bear that wandered into a what? a dollar store. Yeah. So this bear, yeah, is in a dollar store, walking up and down the aisles. Okay? Totally okay. Yeah. Some guy sees it and decides, well, we got to get the bear out of here. Yeah. And so saying, come on, and, getting the bear close to the door. And it looks like that the bear actually leaves. But then somebody saw the bear and said, this bear is acting weird, or the bear was being aggressive. Yeah, I don't know what the bear did that was being aggressive. I don't, yeah, yeah. I didn't, the video didn't say anything. Yeah, one lady said it scratched her, but she didn't care. She kept on shopping. Yeah, really. An old lady said, yeah, it scratched me, but, it didn't bother me. Okay, but somebody started saying, there's a bear in the dollar store. It just left. It's a bear. It weighs 200 to 300 pounds. It actually weighed 120, and people freaked out. So the police came and shot it. Yeah, they could have, but he didn't tranquilized it and then taken it out to where it lives. Yeah, but apparently in this part of whatever state it was in, it's not unusual to see bears. But I guess in dollar stores. Yeah. Yeah. The bear wants a shawl. Maybe it wants a toothbrush. It's looking at the different kinds of toothbrush, what kind, to get something like that. Okay. Let's keep going here. Okay. All consciousnesses of sentient beings, except for an Arya's mind of meditative equipoise, directly realizing emptiness, are deceived in that the phenomena appear truly existent to them, although they are not. Okay? Shravaka arhats, solitary realizers, and pure ground bodhisattvas, those on the 8th, 9th, and 10th bhumis, have eradicated all afflictive obscurations. They know that all conditioned phenomena are empty of true existence, but appear truly existent, such as a mirage in the desert is empty of water, but appears to be water. Another very good example. Yeah, when you're driving in the desert and you're thirsty and you look, you're sure that's water. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, a boat that appears truly existent is false. Yeah, the boat exists, but the true existence superimposed on it does not. Okay. Although worldly beings may know veiled truths, we perceive veiled truths. Yeah, the clock, the tissues, the table. Yeah, such as a person, clock, tissue, table, flower. Worldly beings do not know them as veiled truths. Because to recognize that a veiled truth is a veiled truth, yeah, you must first ascertain it as false. In other words, as appearing truly existent, but not existing as it appears. But without having refuted these things as true, they cannot establish with a reliable cognizer that they are falsities. So we say the thermos is a falsity because to an ignorant mind, it appears truly existent, although ignorance does not establish a truly existent thermos. Yeah, because ignorance is a distorted mind, a wrong mind. Okay. So, in other words, to know that phenomena are false, practitioners must first realize emptiness and refute the existence of the conceived object of true grasping, which is truly existent phenomena. Okay, so to know that the gong, let's give the thermos a break, to know that the gong is a falsity, we have to first negate its true existence because it appears to us that way. So we have to negate that it actually exists the way it appears. But still, to our ignorant mind, when we come out of meditative equipoise, assuming we were in meditative equipoise before, it still appears as inherently existent, but we know that appearance is wrong. Yeah, we know it's wrong. So only then can they establish these knowable objects as falsities and as veiled truths. Okay, so we can establish the gong as existing with our conventional reliable cognizer, but we ordinary beings cannot establish this as a veiled truth, because to establish it as a veiled truth, we would have to first refute that it's inherently existent in order to, recognize that appearance of inherent existence as false. And then we would say that phenomena is a falsity. So although cars and people are veiled truths, a mind establishing them as existent does not necessarily know them as veiled truths. Okay, so we look at it, cars, the gong is a veiled truth, we establish them as existent, we all kind of agree, there's no contradictory opinions to it, and we're not talking about its inherent existence or not, that's fine. But do we know it as a veiled truth? Do we know that it's false? That the appearance of true existence is false? No. Okay. So when false things appear to those arhats or the pure ground bodhisattvas, they recognize them as falsities and see them as like illusions, things that do not exist as they appear. So that's what like an illusion means. It does not exist the way it appears. From the perspective of these beings, boats, feelings, forests, are mere veilings, mere conventionalities, mere eliminating their being truths. But that does not mean that those Aryas don't cognize veiled truths. They see that they're not truths because they're not inherently existent. But they do cognize veiled truths. Whatever is a veiled truth exists conventionally, and these liberated beings perceive conventionally existent phenomena. If you said that they don't perceive conventional phenomena, then you're left with saying either conventional phenomena used to exist, and when they had realized nirvana, they got zapped by those flying saucers and, no longer exist. Or you would have to say that they never existed, and both of those are incorrect because they function and they produce causes, they produce effects. Okay. Okay. So noble objects or existence can be divided into ultimate truths and veiled truths. Remember? Yeah, only those two, no other choice. Veiled truths are true to an ignorant mind, although when compared with ultimate truths, they are false because they appear truly existent, although they are not. The consciousnesses to which these false veiled truths appear are mistaken because objects appear to be truly existent to them, but they aren't. So they're mistaken consciousnesses. Yeah, these consciousnesses cannot posit their false objects because truly existent objects do not exist, and their falseness can be identified and eliminated only through reasoning, analyzing the ultimate, and meditative equipoise on emptiness. So this is said from the Madhyamika perspective. So the discussion beginning with the verse below is stated from the perspective of the world, that is, how things appear to and are apprehended by the everyday consciousness of people who have not realized emptiness, either inferentially or directly. That's at least me. I don't know. Maybe it's you too. Okay? These everyday conventional consciousnesses are perceivers of falsities. Yeah? Because their objects appear to be truly existent, although they are not. Yeah? They perceive the gong as truly existent. They're not grasping the gong as truly existent. Okay? Yeah? So their consciousnesses, although mistaken, although false, perceiving a false object, still, yeah, they can ascertain that there's a gong. Yeah. No consciousness can ascertain a truly existent gong. Yeah. But when we just talk in a conventional way, without analyzing and all of that, yes, we can establish this is a gong. Okay, yeah, everybody, okay, it's a gong. Yeah. Okay. So here's what Chandrakirti says. Perceivers of falsities are of two types. Okay, those with clear sense faculties and those with impaired sensory faculties. A consciousness with an impaired sense faculty is considered wrong compared to a consciousness with an unimpaired sense faculty. Okay, so they say that when you have hepatitis, things appear yellow to you. I had hepatitis many years ago. They didn't appear yellow to me, but apparently to some people they appear yellow. So we'll accept that. Okay? Yeah. The things appear yellow. Are they yellow? No, they're not yellow. Okay. The sense consciousness is impaired. The eye consciousness is somehow impaired. I think it must be, I don't know how it is for people who are colorblind, but they can not. Anybody here colorblind? Can you see green and red? It's hard to differentiate, something like that. Yeah. So that's an impaired faculty. Yeah. So perceivers of falsities are of two types: those with clear sense faculties, your eyes, ears, everything works normally, and those with impaired sensory faculties. A consciousness with an impaired sense faculty is considered wrong compared with a consciousness with an unimpaired sense faculty. Okay? Like somebody who, okay, if you're talking about human beings and somebody comes in and says, this is the cat's dish. Yeah, we have 4 kitties. So this is what our kitties eat out of. Yeah? Is that an accurate perception? No. Okay. What's impaired is their mental consciousness, because they're conceiving of this as a kitty dish. Maybe because they saw kitty dishes that, looked like this, and when you hit them, they sounded like a gong, so they said it's a kitty dish. Okay. That's a wrong perception. Yeah. Why is it wrong? Because just conventional knowledge is that it's not. Okay. Does that mean that everything society thinks on and agrees on is true? That everything society thinks exists? So just because a large number of people believe it doesn't mean that they're all perceiving it with a conventional valid cognizer. Yeah, because if they did, the emperor would have been wearing clothes. Okay? Because everybody, except that one little kid, said, yeah, look, the emperor has new clothes on. Aren't they beautiful? So just because a lot of people believe it, that doesn't mean that they have conventional valid cognizers. Why? Because you can test something out. Yeah. And that little boy, or that little kid, I don't know, boy, girl, did they go up and try and pull the robe, or did they poke a hole in it, or they did something so that everybody went, oh, no, there's no beautiful robe that the emperor is wearing. Yeah. Okay. We had wrong consciousnesses. Okay. That little kid had a correct consciousness. Yeah. So worldly consciousnesses are the sense and mental consciousnesses in the mind streams of ordinary beings and Aryas that perceive veiled truths. Worldly consciousnesses are of two types: those that are accurate and those that are wrong. Okay. The former, the accurate ones, have clear sense faculties. The latter, the wrong ones, have impaired faculties. Here, impaired faculties are those with superficial adventitious defects. Yeah, those consciousnesses that depend on unimpaired faculties are correct. Okay. So you might say, oh, but that's a person out there. Yeah. And you're telling me it's a, what do you call it? I used the example earlier. A scarecrow. Yeah. Yeah. You're telling me I perceive a person. You're telling me it's a scarecrow. A scarecrow. A scarecrow. Yeah, we're all getting tired. Okay. Yeah. If I'm perceiving it as a person, yeah, it's my mental consciousness that is impaired. I'm misjudging what it is. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And so those consciousnesses that depend on unimpaired faculties are correct. It's a scarecrow. Yeah. And those depending on impaired faculties are incorrect in relation to the world because it's not a scarecrow. No, it's not a person. Yeah. Their objects are positive, respectively, as accurate for somebody who sees the scarecrow, or fraudulent in relation to the world. Okay, you see it as a person. Okay. Okay, so impaired faculties prevent us from knowing everyday conventional things correctly. They may have an internal or external cause of error. Internal causes of error include jaundice, which causes a yellowish appearance, bad eyes that cause blurry perceptions. Anybody in that category besides me? Drugs that cause hallucinations. Yeah. Or external causes of error are, for example, a quickly turning propeller that appears like a circle. Yeah. When I was a little kid, we were flying from California back to Illinois to see relatives. And this was in the day of propeller planes. And I looked out the window we were in the middle of, I don't know, flying over Nebraska or someplace. And I said, Mommy, that propeller isn't turning anymore. And she said, yes, it is, dear. It just, is going so fast that you think it's not turning. Yeah. Now, ordinarily, she would be right. But I said, Mommy, it's not turning. Look. And she looked, and the propeller was not turning. And then there was a voice on the plane from the pilot, we are making an emergency landing. Yeah. Okay. So if the propeller had been turning, yeah, she would have been correct. My mom would have been correct. Yeah, but it wasn't turning. Yeah. So if it was turning, I would have been the one who was incorrect. Yeah. Yeah. So external causes of error are, for example, a quickly turning propeller that appears as a circle, a mirror that seems to be a real face, a cave reverberating an echo, sunlight on asphalt or sand forming a mirage, as well as televisions, hologram projectors, and magicians' mantras and salves that create the appearance of things that are not there. Our location may also be an external cause of error. While riding in a car, the scenery around us appears to move, whereas in fact it is stationary and we are moving. Actually, in fact, it's moving too, but we don't perceive it moving because we're moving at the same speed as it is. Okay? Although these external causes of error are not within the person, they nevertheless become the cause for seeing mirages, reflections, and so on. Yeah. I remember seeing this movie, A Beautiful Mind. And if you see that, it was about a man with mental illness, very brilliant, a very brilliant scientist, but he saw things that weren't there and completely, was certain that they were there. Yeah. So that is, you know, a cause of error. That was a mental cause of error for him. His wife, one time, because he was perceiving one thing and she was another, once they had a big fight, she looked in the mirror, yeah, and saw herself, and she was really mad at herself because she couldn't communicate with him, and she threw something at the mirror. Okay? Do you think the mirror was causing her damage? What was the problem there? Why did she throw the shoe at the mirror? Because she thought the person in the mirror was herself, and she was mad at herself. Okay? So reflections, are false. TV appearances are false. Yeah. But boy, they can certainly rev us up emotionally, and that's why, the movie industry does so well, because it gets everybody emotionally revved up and you want more. And because, there it is, those people on the screen are fighting. There's no people on the screen. But I'm reacting as if there are people on the screen. Oh, look, they just kissed. Ha ha. It's a television set. Nobody who kissed there. But we just see an image and we react to it as though it were the real object. Yeah, this is deceptive appearances. Yeah, these are wrong cognizers when we perceive them as real objects. Okay, so I just looked at the clock. We're a little bit over time. Maybe we could do one or two questions.
Going back to this morning's session, you mentioned that the two truths are not two ways of looking at one thing. They're distinct objects apprehended by different minds.
Mm-hmm.
And you said they exist on one base.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like there's three things then. The conventional truth, the ultimate truth, and the base that they exist upon. But then what's that base?
Well, the base, is just this thing. Yeah. And it appears as a conventional truth. Yeah. It appears truly existent, although it isn't. Yeah, this thermos is not truly existent.
But isn't the base a conventional truth?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. But yeah, but still, there's the base, and then there's the base as the conventional truth, and the base as having the ultimate nature of emptiness. That emptiness is also here. Okay?
This may be an impossible question with the time remaining, but what I've noticed is that you very quickly, at least in your teachings, you very quickly start analyzing things. So I imagine that has come from years of doing that kind of practice. Can you explain in a condensed way, after you've done a certain amount of study, how did you apply yourself to this in daily life so that it started making a difference?
Okay. I think that's a very good question. I think it started when I was first learning low rig. Yeah, mind and awareness. And in there, they distinguish between objects of direct perceptions that our senses see, our five senses see, and conceptual images, conceptual appearances. And I began to really look at my life through that and check how often am I having a direct perceiver, and how often is there a conceptual appearance. And wow, was I surprised at how much what was going on in my mind was conceptual appearance. it was not what was actually out there. It was my, you know, conceptual appearance of what that object was. Yeah, I wasn't necessarily seeing the objects that was out there. Because as soon as there's a conceptual appearance, you're merging like all the different characteristics or different moments of time of that object into one thing. Yeah, kind of how you're looking at it that day, that moment. Yeah. So to me, just starting out to discriminate what is an object of a direct perceiver and what is a conceptual appearance to my mind that is not the object. It bears a resemblance to the object, and the conceptual appearances are useful if they're accurate, but I often have inaccurate conceptual appearances. Yeah. Okay. It's like, wow, this clock is fantastic. Yeah. It says that it's 74.3 degrees Fahrenheit, but you can't see the dot between the 74 and the 3. So initially it looks like it's 743 degrees. But yeah, your previous experience knows that that's incorrect. Yeah. So that is 743 degrees is an incorrect, a mistaken, erroneous consciousness. Okay. But wow, look at that clock. Yeah, it tells you the time and the day and the temperature, and it says even has the seconds, and it has some other crazy little things that I don't know what they mean. Maybe those crazy things, I don't know what it means. Maybe, what is it Marjorie Taylor Greene says? There's Jewish people up in the flying saucers that are projecting that into this clock to make us all confused. Yeah, that's what I'm not lying about her. She didn't mention this clock in particular, but she said that's what was going on. Yeah. Now that part, okay, I have a conceptual appearance of this flying saucer, yeah, with these, Jewish aliens. Yeah, the Martians, okay. So that means the Martians, the Red Sea opened open for the Martians to go through. Oh, God. What makes the Martians Jewish? What? The Martians wear yarmulkes. Okay, so we have Jewish Martians, yeah. And we have Christian and Muslim and Hindu Martians as well. No, just Jewish? Oh, you're anti-Semitic. Yeah. Okay, so, those other little signs, I don't know what they mean. Maybe Marjorie's right, and, yeah. We have to go outside tonight and look for the flying saucers. Actually, we don't need to wait for tonight. We can go outside. We may find them outside.
And then how did you proceed after you started looking at objects?
Well, I started looking for the flying saucers, and I decided that Marjorie was wrong. Yeah. I saw a flying saucer in a movie. Does that mean there's really a flying saucer? The flying saucer in the movie was really huge. Yeah. And I met somebody In fact, I met two people who told me they were abducted by aliens. Yeah, and they said it as if it were the truth. Maybe it is, but I don't think they're Jewish. Alien. Okay. But, so you start checking your perceptions, oh, I don't like that person. Why not? They think supercalifragilisticexpialidocious is a made-up word, They don't know that there's really things that are supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. And I don't like them because they have a different opinion than me and they're wrong. Okay. And then you check. You look up in the dictionary, maybe now it's in the dictionary. Yeah, it is? See, I was right after all. No, so back then, when I was a little kid, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious was not in the dictionary. Yeah, you could look, and at least for that conventional group of people, it's not a word. Yeah, but now it is a word, and it's in the dictionary. So dictionary has the last say. Yeah, what is it defined as?
Oh, I went from, I wanted to see when it went into
What?
The full word supercalifragilisticexpialidocious was first entered into the Oxford English Dictionary with evidence from a 1931 article. It wasn't Mary Poppins that made it famous. I mean, yes, she made it famous, but 1931.
Wow, I thought it was Mary Poppins.
She exploited it, but and then the definition was right back here. Fantastic is basically what it said. Fantastically magnificent. Something.
Yeah. Okay, let's look at another question here. How would you recommend someone who has trauma, especially affecting trusting their own experiences, engage in the practice of checking their perception? Okay. So what you want, if you have trauma, your emotions are really grabbing onto things as truly existent. You're certain, that what that person did was harmful. You're certain that, okay, let's say you're sexually abused. You are certain that by that person sexually abusing you, that, you are now a shameful person. You're shameful. Something is wrong with you because of what that person did to you. Yeah. And you build a whole identity on something is wrong because I was sexually abused as a child. Something was wrong with me. I am, tarnished goods. Okay. Now, you believe that. Well, step back for a minute. And is that true? Is that true? Somebody else harms you, so you become ugly or shameful or whatever. Yeah. So the shame came from the other person to you, hit you in the face, and now you are a horrible object, a degenerate object because of what somebody did to you. Is that true? That is not true in the least. In the least, it is not true. Somebody cannot make you an awful object, a shameful object, or anything like that. Yeah? So you check, well, why did I believe that? Well, you know, something, you know, who knows what. I watched this movie and the characters in the movie said that that person in the movie who was sexually abused is shameful. So I just believed that and thought that that applied to me too. That's not a good reason. Yeah. So you check sometimes like that, and then you can say, oh, wow, this whole image I've had of myself that I've been nourishing is totally wrong. I am not a shameful person. I am a human being with the Buddha potential, with human intelligence. Yeah, I can do things. I have the seed of compassion. I can have compassion, even for the people who thought something was wrong with me, even for the people who abused me. I can have compassion for them. Okay, so you start checking up some of the, you know, these images that you hold very strongly of yourself, and you begin to see they're rubbish. They're total rubbish. So it really, that's how you apply it in your mind. Okay.